Deep dive interviews with music gear inventors, builders, creators, and tone chasers. The Gear Gab Podcast with Eric Dahl uncovers the behind-the-scenes stories of the music gear that inspires us. And now, here's your host, Eric Dahl.
Welcome to Gear Gab. I'm so pleased to have another friend of the show on, to where Jason and I, Jason Gano, have a lot of connections back to St. Louis music and all. But he is the co-owner of M.I.R.C, which we're going to explain that better, musical instrument reclamation company, and also one of the brand new guitar shops that we have in Nashville that you must see. It's 8th Avenue Guitar Works. Jason, thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me today. I'm looking forward to it.
Well, it's so much fun. Now, you had mentioned that, I've had some of your other friends and contemporaries on Gear Gab in the past, but I had to reach out and have you on after I attended the grand opening of your new location on 8th Avenue Guitar Works. And I gotta bring up a little bit about you, to where some of our people that join the show may not know this, but you have a degree in music education, and you've worked for multiple music companies over the year, including St. Louis Music, Korg, Cordoba, the list goes on and on. And then with M.I.R.C, you got involved with that back in 2020.
Yes.
And you're going to have to explain all of this to our listeners and viewers for the show to understand how incredible this thing is with M.I.R.C. But also, you're a touring bass player, and I know it's been a little rough with the new location, Jason, but you've toured the world with some of the top musicians, including Mike Stern, playing bass. And so you never dropped that little gem on me that you were a gifted bass player also.
Hey, we're blessed to be in a town full of fabulous musicians. So if you can just be there with everyone else, it's just a good place to be.
And so what age did you start playing bass?
Well, yeah, I have a picture of me with a guitar in my hands at 3 years old. So I've never done anything else. So that was that. And I started playing guitar. I grew up in a little town in West Virginia, but at my middle school, we had a guitar program. Who would have thought? So I was in the guitar program in 6th grade, but I was so ate up with it that all I would do was practice. All that's, as soon as I got home, I would practice. So I got so far ahead of everyone that was in the class that the teacher handed me a bass, which at the time I did not realize. Later, I knew that it was a 72 jazz bass, but at the time, he just handed me an electric bass and went, well, why don't you learn all the bass lines with what we're going to do in class? That way you're not sitting there bored. And I picked up the bass, and it was like I never went back to playing guitar again. As soon as I had that bass in my hands, I was like, yep, this was it.
Especially a 72 to learn.
Yeah, it was awesome. I didn't know at the time that's what it was. I just knew it was a bass.
I still got my father was a bass player. I play app bass being a guitarist, but I've got his 59 Precision and his 59 Bassman with tags, because he bought them new in 59. As I always tell my daughter, it's like, whatsoever get rid of Grandpa Jerry's bass or amplifier. Yeah. So you'll have to play those sometime we get together.
Oh, I would love to.
But it was so funny, we were talking before we started the show too, Jason, about, working with St. Louis music and how all the mutual friends that you and I have from that area, and how much you learned, working there, that has really brought you to this place in time in Nashville with all of the innovations. But you got to tell the crate amplifier story.
I have so many stories from St. Louis music, but we all kind of do. Yeah, but 14-year-old me got thrown out of a music store for making fun of a crate that was in the wooden crate. I walked in with my buddies, and I was being cool, and I was like, that's the dumbest thing I've ever seen. So fast forward, then many years later, I walked into that same store as the St. Louis music rep to sell that person crate. And he didn't remember kicking me out of there. So I told him the story, and yes, I did sell him crate amplifier.
Hey, we were talking, from when I was gigging, in Cape Girardeau back with my little blues band Van Gogh's Ear. And it's like I was running stereo. And so I had a boogie on one side, and then I had the crate amp on the other side. And everybody in Missouri, I mean, crate was like just so many players, used crate. And you were talking even that recently in 8th Avenue Guitar Works that, a little artist from ZZ Top comes in and starts talking with you about, his amps.
Yeah, because we're in Nashville, you just never know. And Billy Gibbons happened to walk in, and yeah, I walked over to say hi to it, and literally it was because he's as ate up with gear as all of us. So he drove by and saw the sign and went, "Oh, I haven't been in that store yet," and pulled over and walked in. That's how he found out about it. So
Okay, I mean, is that amazing? And I mean, also, I was kidding you about this, and we're going to delve into it more. But with the location, because I was out with the family over the weekend, and then everything. It's like, and we're driving by 8th Avenue, and I just look up. It's like going, oh, all the guitar shops at 8th Avenue. It's like going, it's like I kind of gauge anywhere I am in town. I've done this, I'm sure you have too, Jason. To where it's like, what's my proximity to a guitar shop? And that's kind of how I base all my logistics,
yeah,
you know?
yeah.
But I mean, and we got to talk, I want you to explain this too with the show, Jason, because, and I so want to come and take a tour. So I know we got to work this out eventually, but M.I.R.C, I've been hearing about this for years, and what the company was started 30 years ago or more,
In 1993.
93.
The interesting part in the tie-in to St. Louis music with that is how the company started was Monty Richards, the founder of M.I.R.C, had a music store in the Ozarks. And he would go to St. Louis for, they used to have these things called sound advice seminars. And they would bring in dealers from all over the country and show them what they were working on. But more, it was to just get the pulse of what was happening in the local stores there. Well, Gene Kornblum, who owned St. Louis Music, grabbed Monty and walked him out into the warehouse and showed him a pile of Alvarez guitars and said, "Hey, I these guitars, they're fine, but they have little blemishes and they have things that I don't want to sell these to our dealers as A stock. Can you think of a way to help me move these?" And so Monty grabbed a few of those guitars, put them in his car, and took them back to his shop. And that's where the whole idea started from. So everything actually comes back to St. Louis. And then before Gene passed, I got to tell him that, yes, I ended up buying the company that you helped to start.
Oh my gosh. And I told you before we started the interview, Jason, where I remember Gene, and I remember meeting Gene up in St. Louis, and he was just one of those iconic, music people within the gear industry that, and once again, huge compliment from you of how much you learned from him, to bring you to this point in time now with these companies. But M.I.R.C, it's, a great company. Like you said, it came out of St. Louis music here in Nashville, was based out of Franklin. Now it's expanded so much, you had to build a whole new facility, right?
We did. Yeah. Yeah. So,
And kind of explain what you guys are doing with this, because especially in the age of sustainability, and not waste, and not just, throwing things away, kind of explain this whole deal, Jason.
So, with many of the guitar manufacturers here in the United States, we take the guitars that get returned to them. So, sometimes it got damaged in shipping. So, it would go out to a dealer, and the dealer will say, "Hey, FedEx, like this one got run over by the truck or it got dropped off the truck." So, the manufacturer would send them a call tag and send them a replacement. And then all those guitars pile up. So, we'll take those guitars, they come into our facility now in Laverne, and we will refurbish all of those, and we stamp them as used, and we do lots of things with them now. So originally when Monty started the company, it was a wholesale thing. So
Well,
we would wholesale the instruments out to small mom and pop stores, pawn shops. At that time, there weren't online retailers. Now there's online retailers. But since we took over the business, now we started a direct to consumer side as well, which we call Franklin Guitar Works Online. And now with our new 8th Avenue Guitar Works store, you can come in and actually watch our techs work on instruments and refurbish them. And everything that's in our store is a refurbished instrument.
And to me, and I'm sure yourself too, as a player and a collector, Jason, I think about a couple of pieces I have. I have it's stamped second, a double necko Epiphone, and then also right behind me, I just had a Glazer's team go through. I've got a Alvarez baritone stand used, one of the Vietti models, because I've got the Griffin and, you need the match. But again, I found was with these instruments is that, your team does such a great job doing the refurbish, whether that is with the fretboards, the bodies, the pickups, the tuners, wherever the flaw may be, to where truthfully, the average person, I can't find the flaws.
No. We have 60 employees. Almost all of us are players. There's a few that aren't, but for the most part, all of us are players. And literally every day is Christmas because we don't know exactly what's going to get returned. So just coming in the back door from the manufacturers every day, it's 75 to 100 instruments that come in on the FedEx truck. Then with companies like Fender, we take their returns from all over the world. So we got a 40-foot container of returns from Europe, Australia, Asia. And for the most part, we're not really sure what's in there until we start digging into it. So you're pulling stuff out. And then with the overseas things, you get these cool instruments that aren't available in the US. And you're like, I don't even know what I haven't seen this color before. That on the wall back here, that's a Geddy Lee jazz bass in Sunburst.
Oh my God.
I think it was the German market that it was either Germany or Japan that they did a Sunburst version. So when I saw that, I'm like, all right, well, I have to have that one for me.
See, and that would be this is why I could not be a part of your business, because it's like I would be in M.I.R.C. or at your 8th Avenue Guitar Works, and I would just be taking stuff home all the time. I mean, it would be very bad for me. Yeah. But I got to ask you this too, Jason, when you get those instruments in from all over the world, all of these different brands and all of the companies that you and your team work with, what's the evaluation process? Because you get these in, I mean, do they come in with a piece of paper or a tag or a digital, how does it work?
Well, so they got returned for whatever reason.
Okay.
And when we get it, for the most part, we ignore whatever reason that it came in for, because usually if somebody found something wrong with the instrument, they stopped there, and there might be multiple other things. So if we took their word for it, then it would be harder to refurbish it. So we have a process that we go through from top to bottom to make sure everything's working the way it's supposed to be.
How interesting, because I wondered about that, because like you said, an instrument can come in and they could say, well, the bridge pickup is not functioning. Mm-hmm. But then that could be the least of the worries.
Yeah. It could have a twisted neck. It could have, fret sprout. It could have something, a high fret somewhere, but they never got to that because the pickup didn't work.
So then some of them, and I want to lead this into when we start talking about 8th Avenue Guitar Works, is some of them then, let's say the neck is twisted beyond reclamation. You guys just like disassemble it then, and then the body itself gets sold? I mean, how does that work?
So some of them we disassemble and then we use those parts to refurbish the other instruments. So we'll do that. Also available at 8th Avenue are necks and bodies where, the body didn't make it, but the neck's there, or the neck didn't make it and the body is there. So people that want to do their own kit guitar. Yeah. And we also have Mighty Mite is another company that we bought a year and a half ago. And
I love that brand for so many years. I mean, and once again, not to date ourselves, Jason, but I'm going to. you remember in the magazines to where with the Mighty Might, because I don't know how many necks and bodies and everything else I bought from Mighty Might. But it's like, you get the Guitar Player magazine and go, oh my gosh, what do they have available now? And that was, at that time, before the internet stuff, that was the only way you found out was in the guitar magazines. And then I remember getting their catalog in the mail.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And so now your company owns Mighty Might.
Yes, yeah, we bought it a year and a half ago. It's awesome. So again, not to name drop, but it's Nashville, and it's kind of hard to not tell a story without somebody's name being involved. But Tommy Emmanuel walked into 8th Avenue Guitar Works because he's again gearhead. He had been over at Groons and he saw the story and wanted to come over. He saw the wall of Mighty Might necks and replacement parts and all that, and started telling us the story about how his first guitar in Australia was a Mighty Might that he put everything together. It was a kit.
I did not know that. And I mean, I've had Tommy on the show multiple times. I've been to his house, and it kind of looks like, even downstairs, in his old house, it looked like a music store because there were just guitars strewn all over the living room. And it's like, because you never knew when he wanted to pick up something.
Yeah, yeah. I had no idea either till he was telling the story, and you're like, wow. And then we're working on a clear Bob and Humbucker recreation of the pickup that was in Eddie's Bumblebee, the second Frankel's Diamond. So, yeah, yeah. It was literally only in that guitar for the photo shoot, and then it got pulled out and they put a DiMarzio in. But it's in there for that. So we're doing a recreation of it.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I want to cover that with one of the magazines I write for. Just you and I are going to become very close and have a lot of coffee together. So, but it's so after, with M.I.R.C, when you get the instruments in, obviously all these different, companies and everything else that come in, you guys, evaluate them, you get them up to speed. And then on the back of the headstock, do you stamp like used or second, or what's the symbol?
We have a used stamp that we use, and it just says used on there. And in some cases, depending on the manufacturer, we will change the serial number to our serial number. Fender likes for us to do that. Taylor doesn't. Taylor knows exactly what they sent us, and they want that serial number kept with it because they know it ended up at our place. So if a customer ever has a question, they call Taylor, then Taylor gives them our number, and then we take care of it from there. But they like it that way. We try to do whatever the manufacturer would like.
That's amazing. Well, and not to divulge secret information, because you're not going to do that off the interview. Like on average, how many instruments, per week or per month does M.I.R.C get in?
Well, through the back door, we get 75 to 100 a day in returns. Then we'll get, usually a couple times a month, we get 40-foot containers from somewhere around the world. And out of the shop, we're between 100 and 125 a day. Again, you never know how long any instrument's going to take and what we're going to have to do to it. So, that varies a little bit on that side of it. But we have, as of Friday, there were 17,000 instruments in our building.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Okay, so I got to ask you this question, and not to put you on the spot, but like once your team, once you and the team with M.I.R.C go through the instruments, then are they warranted through you? I mean, how's that handled?
Yeah. We do a warranty that if it goes out wholesale to another one of our retailers, we warranty the instrument to them to make sure if there's any issues with it. And then stuff that's sold in 8th Avenue Guitar Works or our Franklin Guitar Works online has a 1-year warranty through us.
That's incredible. That's real. I mean, that, and I think it's so awesome too, that not only, not just trashy, which, you and I coming up through the music stores and pawn shops over the years, some instruments would just get thrown away, litters. Like when I was working with the pawn shops in Las Vegas, even they would have like a back room and like a rack, and they're like, "Do you want any of these?" Well, like they would virtually give them to me.
Yeah.
Because they were, so flawed and such issues. And that's what I used to do when I was out there too, as a values guy. They would bring me in to tell them whether it was a Gibson or a Chipson,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
or if they got in, at the Pawn Stars shop, to where if they got in a vintage piece like a 58 Strat, was it worth 30,000 or was it worth like 5,000?
Right.
And so I would have to come in with my little toolkit and take them apart and go, well, here's how much this is because the neck's oversprayed, the electronics have been changed out, and the tremolo was changed out and routed.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, oh my gosh, we thought we had a $35,000 guitar. I'm like, no, I'd say about 10. And that's exactly what they got for it. But it's so interesting though, with with that whole with M.I.R.C, what you're doing with that, and with the great instruments that you're basically revitalizing.
Yeah. Yeah. And when it gets down to it, we try to not put anything into a landfill. So we reuse and recycle everything. The cardboard that things come to us in gets reused on the outbound side as much as possible. So, and then if it's finally to the point where we can't do anything else with it, we might make a ukulele birdhouse out of it. And we have those for sale. We'll do.
Oh my gosh. Okay, I'm gonna have to find these now.
Oh yeah, we got a lot of ukulele birdhouses. They're great.
That is incredible. It's once again stupid stories. When my daughter was going to school here in Nashville, they had a huge number of ukuleles. And, much like yourself, I'm kind of a repair guy because you have to be when you have so many instrument code points. And so they would break a ukulele almost per week. And so I had to buy separate clamps to re-glue the bridges on the ukuleles. And so I was the ukulele repair guy for the school, but I would do it for free. And they would just send me over strings and I would heal them. And sometimes it was like a, machine head, tuning head or something. I would get a new one of those in, replace that, but usually it was the bridge.
Yeah, yes, yep. Pulling up for
Right. Yeah, something, or, especially with kids, not knowing, little kids tuning them way higher than ukuleles are designed to go. Kind of like, as you and I know, when people put steel strings on a nylon string guitar, what could go wrong?
yeah.
So that is so incredible. I mean, with M.I.R.C, I want to talk about the new location that you opened up in February of this year with 8th Avenue Guitar Works, and I was fortunate to get to come to the grand opening, which obviously I want to come back. And I will do that very soon because I want to explain this space, and you'll do a better job than I will, Jason, to where it's a curated space, and you and I both came up in guitar shops and pawn shops and all that. But what you guys have done, what you and your partner have done on this, to where with the furniture and with the instrument displays, and then with the coffee shop area, and then one of the things that impressed me the most that I've told a lot of people about is on the backstage, you have the repair areas and there are video cameras so you can watch the guys, and gals repairing the instruments, and it's on a big screen monitor. So you got to go through this whole thing. How did this whole vision for 8th Avenue Guitar Works come up?
Wow. Yeah, it was a 2-year process of how are we going to do this? What are we going to do? And as you know, the last thing this town needs is another guitar shop. We got lost.
I'll agree with that. We always need one more.
So my rule number one that everyone was sick of hearing me say was, if we just make a guitar shop, we failed. Like we don't need to do that. Where are we going to fit in? And the question we get the most is, what is a refurbished guitar? What's that mean? What is it? And I'm like, well, yeah, at least for me, like most of the retail that I enjoy now has some kind of experience involved with it. So I really wanted to build an experience so where people could come in, feel comfortable, hang out, watch our techs refurbish instruments, and then you're surrounded by them, and also have a whole area filled with parts, necks, bodies, everything you could want to upgrade the instrument you have or build your own instrument if you want. But just have it all there. And it's really, you have these ideas and you think, okay, this sounds good. And you get close to time to open and you're like, oh man, is anybody going to get it? Are they really going to understand? And then people walk in and you hear them say the things that you were thinking that you wanted them to say. And it's just so nice. And we've managed to fit into this 8th Avenue guitar row here and have our spot. Like the Groons guys, they come over, the repair guys come over and buy parts from us and take those back over to work on their instruments. They're so totally that we're there. And it's not competition because we don't have pre-war Martins.
Right. Well, also, and you and I were talking about this to where, with 8th Avenue, to where you have all, to me, like in New York, or somewhere else, Jason, to where you would have like the clothing district or the fabric district or, all of these different districts and areas to where, like the interview I was telling you about when we were talking about humidification and that there's like one street that all they do are violin bows. But to me, it is so Nashville, so Music City to have just 8th Avenue, but also bragging on what you've accomplished with you and your team and your partner in this. It's a curated space. When I came for the grand opening, and I really didn't know what I was coming into because Christy that works with you on publicity and her team, it's like I interview their music artists, and this was the first time they said, "Hey, there's a guitar shop grand opening. Would you like to come?" And I'm like, obviously, yes. And I got there and I didn't want to leave. You know what? I'm just walking around taking in, because like you mentioned too, Jason, where you got, not only do you have the finished instruments, of every kind, acoustics, electrics, basses, ukuleles, you name it, but also with the bodies and the necks and the parts and the hardware and everything. It's almost, it's like something that you and I would have dreamed up as teenagers, to where it's like it's Guitar Player magazine comes to life.
Yeah. 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 Our design company, who's out of Washington, D.C., that helped us with the design of the whole place. And I told them what I'm looking for is an Advanced Auto Parts meets an Apple store.
That is awesome. I mean, because it's like, you think about it though, especially musicians, to where, we all like to hang out. And I was talking with my wife too, because we're going to be redesigning my instrument space. And I said, I've got to take you by 8th Avenue Guitar Works and I would show her the pictures, but it's like going, and I mean this, Jason, I think what you guys have built, you can't really get it until you walk in the door.
Yeah. Yes.
It's that it's just the space. It's just and I'm not knocking it because I love all music stores, all guitar shops. And I have friends at all of them, as you and I both do. But it's a relaxed atmosphere. It almost feels to me, when I first walked in there, Jason, it reminded me of some of the ultra lounges that had opened up in Las Vegas.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Except if the ultra lounge was surrounded with musical instruments and coffee and had repair people on a stage.
Yeah. Yeah.
So who came up with the idea? Who to put the repair people up on the stage, have the video cameras, and then up on the monitors?
Well, the idea was mine to start with, but our people took my idea and said, "Hold my beer," and came up with that whole great thing. That's like, I was like, yeah, it would be nice because you want to be able to sit and watch and not have people, have to come behind you and look to have a big TV where they could see what was going on. And next thing I know, our guys were like, okay, Well, then they had the workbench out. I saw the flat screen getting put on the front of the workbench and cameras being put over the top. And I'm like, I just let them go. And then they took what was my idea and made it come to life and did all that amazing stuff.
I kid you not, when I came to the grand opening, I know I stood there for at least 20 minutes talking to one of the repair people,
Hmm.
just watching them. And I thought that was the coolest thing because as you and I know, and I've learned a lot of great repairs from a lot of people, back in Cape Girardeau, particularly, like Alan Palermo, Kenny Martin, people like that. But they were always kind of relegated to like a dingy little corner in a music store, all of the repair people, or else they're put on like a separate floor to where nobody sees them. They're like the Keebler Elves of instruments. It's like they're doing the magic, and they're making the instruments play right and look right and restring them and everything that we as musicians have to have for basses, guitars, ukes, you name it. But you never really saw 'em. And to me, what it made me think of, Jason, was with the setup on the stage, with the repair people doing the work, it almost reminded me of like a sushi bar. To where what I love to do, to where there's a sushi bar, and it's like going and you're ordering your sushi, but then you're watching them make the sushi.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
What a cool experience to where people can just come in and I'm sure it's not always easy for the repair people because I know myself, when I'm working on stuff, I was working on the Harley this weekend, and you get the rubber mallet out, and
Yeah.
it can come from this, but it's still so neat to see the people repairing and working on these instruments that are going to go up on the wall, and somebody's going to buy.
Yeah. Yeah. Repair techs by definition are usually introverts, by and large introverts. So, we are fortunate that we have a few extroverts on our team. So, and they love being in front of people. But like some of the big repair techs in town have come in and they'll look at that and go, mm-mm, no way. I don't want people watching what I'm doing. And it's like, that's fair. And there are certain things that we'll go in the back room for because you just have to. But
Right.
like we have a buffing wheel in the back, so we don't want to do that out in front of everybody.
No. But
But
to me, it's so much fun seeing them, like working on the electronics, working on the machine heads, getting the nuts set up right, for the action, all of the things that you and I know are done that have to be done correctly. But I think what it does is it elevates the repair people.
yeah, it does.
It kind of, because they're on a stage, they're on an elevated stage, and it kind of makes them the rock stars of 8th Avenue Guitar Works.
Yeah, yeah. And we wanted to shine a light on it and keep some of that mystery out of I'm taking your instrument and running to the back and then I bring it out and it's done, but you never saw what happened with it. And how many years when you started were you frightened of a truss rod?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I think that was one of the most intimidating things was always the truss rod, and the bridge and all that kind of stuff. But it's like, and especially, oh my gosh, when you get into a Rickenbacker and you've got a dual truss rod or something, it's like, it was kind of, and especially when you're talking about vintage instruments and stuff too, or as you and I know, a bass guitar, because, a bass guitar or 12 string, you've got so much string tension,
Yeah,
and it's just, the truss rod is fighting that.
yeah.
And then how did the whole, because once again, and I'm a coffee addict, how did you come up with the idea for the whole little coffee bar and all this kind of stuff too? Because once again, you had me when I walked in the door to where, with like we talked about with the repairs and everything, with all the displays, with the cool furniture. But then when you walk in right off to the left, you got like a whole barista thing going.
Yeah. Well, yeah, again, that's all to the experience of it. And, not we right across the street from us is Eighth and Roast, which is an amazing coffee spot. It has everything. So we have like basic stuff in our spot for just so people can grab a cup of coffee, sit down and watch our people refurbish instruments. But some of that idea came from walking up and down 12 South. Every place in 12 South's got a coffee bar. I would have loved to put a bourbon bar in there, but I don't think we would have gotten any work done. Not,
You never
I
get anybody to leave off on that one. Yeah, it'd have to be like an after hours. You know what I mean? It's like then it becomes the ultra lounge, Jason. Yeah. But I mean, it's so incredible to me on what you have done with Eighth Avenue to where it's its own entity. It has its own vibe, and it really not only elevates the repair people that are refurbishing the instruments, but to me, Jason, it elevates the refurbished instruments. It brings up the whole feel of it to where you don't feel. And like I said, I mean, I own at least 3 or 4 stamped used or second instruments right now to myself, and when I play them, my hands don't know the difference, and people, when I'm playing shows, people don't know the difference.
Yeah, right. Yeah. The store concept is just the next level in how we explain everything that we do. And you and I talked earlier about Monty, the founder of the company. Back in 1993, the internet was just getting really started, and he felt like he didn't want to promote the business because the manufacturers that we were working with, he thought might be upset that we were promoting seconds and refurbished instruments. But now, now there's a big internet that everybody has their own opinion that's on there, and some good, some bad. And the reuse and recycle movement in the entire world is just much larger than ever. So, and there are people that would prefer to buy a refurbished instrument rather than a new instrument. Uh, it Coming from St. Louis music, small mom and pop music stores are near and dear to my heart and always have been. And not not only for us to tell the story with Eighth Avenue, we wanted that to kind of be representative of what all of these other stores are doing in other towns. And I wanted to be able to show some of them, they're third and fourth generation mom and pop that, and to be able to go, hey, you know, this is the way retail is moving now. Check this out. And it's scary when you have to do it yourself, but if somebody else can show you, like, here's an example of how this can work in your town.
Right. Yeah. And that's one of those things too. You and I both coming up, as kids in that era, and I was talking with you about the music stores there in Cape Girardeau, Keys Music and Chibblebines that I always went to, and that and I still think of those people as family,
Mhm.
and to where even when I write music review articles now on Music Gear, Jason, I always mention go to a brick and mortar store and play it because and don't get me wrong, it's like I've ordered the music gear online just like you have, but to me, if you're going to bond with an instrument and you're going to pay more than your average dollar for something, I want it in my hands. I want to play it. I want to feel it. I want to plug it in and really experience it. And I think to your testament, you can only do that with brick and mortar stores.
Yes. Yeah. And yeah, I quarterly do a presentation for all of our employees about what's going on in the entire industry, what's happening. And I always have stats. And one stat that really never changes is that roughly 50% of instruments get sold online and 50% get sold in stores. And you would think your feeling, at least my feeling would be sometimes, oh my gosh, it's 90% get sold online and there's only 10%. It fluctuates 1% per quarter depending on where you are. But half of it gets sold online, half of it gets sold in a store. And that's the way it has been for a very long time now.
And for you and I think for a lot of musicians, Jason, it's the relationship. I like to, and that's one of the things, and it's been that way, since I was little, but also even today when I go into the Nashville music shops, it feels like Cheers. You know what I mean? It's like I know people, they know me, and then also they know maybe what I'm looking for. What's on the list right now. It's like, hey, I got this J45 you need to try out, or something that they know that you and I are looking for. And you don't get that online. I think online you can do the research, you can drill down, you can learn the specifications,
Mhm.
but you can't play it. It's just like with the incredible instruments behind you. And I got to ask you this, not to put you on the spot. What is your favorite bass guitar at this time?
I have a Federa Emperor that I had made for me. So that's been my bass for the last 10 years. It's like I played O'Teal's and then called up Jason at Federa and said, "Hey man, I whatever, I have to have it." And he's like, "Oh, we'll take care of you. We'll give you a good price." It was still, $6,000 at that time. But every time I pick it up, I'm like, it was worth every penny of it. It was
Right.
absolutely
There's something about when you have a custom instrument made, and I've had a couple made for me, the one from Taylor and one from Martin, and it's like it just something when Jason, it was built for you,
yeah, yeah.
to your specification. So then, what is your main amplification right now that you're using for your bass?
Aguilar. Yeah. That
Just
that
add the mill.
yeah. I back in the day, that's not the first prototype of the SWR Working Man's 12, but that was the first run of them. I was working at SWR at the time. I don't know how many gigs that thing's been on with me, and it's a tank. It sounds
I've recommended that amp to so many people over the years because, if you and I trying out stuff and writing articles on all this music gear. And after playing it, it's like I recommended the SWR Working Man's amp to so many people because for the features and for the sound quality, you can't beat it, and for the cost.
no, no. That was I was very fortunate to, be part of that company in the beginning, and it was amazing. There was an amazing group of people that built some wonderful amplifiers.
Oh my gosh, so true. Well, I got to bring up real quickly, give a shout out to our partner for the show for Gear Gab, which is the Acoustic Coffee Company, and this is actually the one with Jake Shimabukuro. So if you're a coffee addict like myself and Jason, use the code Gear Gab as a one word when you go to the Acoustic Coffee Company website. You get 20% off of your first order for some tasty coffee. I just looked at that logo right there. So bringing up coffee. Now I want to make sure also for everybody joining us, Jason, with the show, for the websites, for everything that you've got going now with essentially three companies.
Mhm.
I mean, what do you recommend, like website wise, to engage with you, and also as people, because I have many friends that plan their trips and they come to Nashville, and besides, going down to Lower Broad and having some hot chicken, that always have to pick, you know, the music stores they're going to go to. What's your recommendation, or with the websites, with everything you've got going? And then I want to also then I follow a question after that.
So M.I.R.C is our big umbrella company. So underneath that is franklinguitarworks.com, which is where online you can find our refurbished instruments. That's also Franklin Guitar Works on Reverb and Franklin Guitar Works on eBay. And then Franklin Guitar Parts is where you can buy other parts from eBay. And those are generally the parts where we pulled them off of an instrument, but they're scratched. There's a little something wrong with it. Uh, then there's Mighty Money, where you can buy replacement necks, replacement bodies that are brand new, custom painted bodies that we've custom painted in our shop. And then we have a whole line of reclaimed parts there. And those are parts we pulled off instruments that they're knit. Like there's nothing wrong with them. They're brand new. They just got pulled off of an instrument that we couldn't repair for one reason or another. So, and then 8th Avenue Guitar Works is our new retail shop.
Well, and got to get the address and everything for that also, Jason.
2101 8th Avenue South. If you know where Zany's Comedy Club is, we're right next door to Zany's, right across the street from Groon's. Go look at some awesome guitars over there and then come see us.
And the great guitar sign that you guys had built out front at 8th Avenue also, and it was so funny when I pulled up and noticed that Zany's was right across, and then I walk in and it's like, I've got to ask you then, for the coming year or years, can you share any other big announcements possibly that are going to be going on with the companies, with M.I.R.C or with Franklin or with 8th Avenue Guitar Works? Anything else? Because once again, thinking, it seems like with the space that you have there at 8th Avenue Guitar Works, you could easily host a guitar pull or a songwriter round, or even, it seems like it would be perfect to me, because I love attending these over the years. And if you had to where a guitar company came in and did a clinic.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right. And we're easing into all of that. So like, boy, we opened the doors and I got hit with everybody that has all amazing ideas, and there's all kinds of things we can do. And yes, everything you mentioned, yes, but we're going to take our time and figure out like how best to use that space. And how we had a mixer just for Industry Mixer 2 weeks ago on a Tuesday night, and we had 100 people show up, and that was record company people, artists. It was kind of like the grand opening night, just another more informal place for people to gather. And what we heard was there's really no place in town right now for us to all get together like this. It would be cool if you would do this. So I think we're going to pick a Tuesday night every month and say, this is it. So everybody knows when it's going to be, and just have a space for people to get together and talk.
I think that is so awesome because, and you and I mentioned too, Jason, with so many, and so many musicians that are in Nashville and come through Nashville on tour and everything else, but also, pretty much they get left alone. Like we were talking about, Billy Gibbons and Tommy and, and I bumped into Joe Bonamassa, I don't know how many times here in Nashville, but, they're just like you and I. You're in there to look at music gear, to play some instruments, that, to me, I do not want to bother those people, while they are enjoying the time off at a music shop.
Yeah. We were talking earlier about Fender's Teletown event that happened last week at the Ryman, and you missed Brad Paisley at the end, but he was walking out on stage as they were setting everything up, and was trying to hold for a second while they were getting everything ready for him. He walked over to the microphone and he's like, "What's up, nerds?"
And that's this. I mean, that's it. Because the I can't remember how many months ago now, Jason, but the Telly event to where Brad did the whole thing with the Paisley Telecasters, the custom ones that he's done with found the vapor and all that. And I attended that. And once again, you look around that space, at the Fender showroom, it's like going, these are my people. Yep, these are all music gear nerds. It's like going, it's fine. It's Brad is an incredible artist and, a great singer, songwriter, and guitarist. But we're all just nerds at heart when it comes to the music gear. And the biggest thing to me was when they handed me one of these guitars, one of these Telecasters, and I'm like going, oh my gosh. And, you're looking at the finish, you're looking at everything. That's the fun of it. I think that it's still harkens back to when we were little kids in music stores.
Yeah.
And that fascination. And yeah, I mean, Brad saying that, yeah, like you said, I had to leave early because I had to prep for another interview the next day. So I didn't get to stay for the final part. But it's like, but I mean, once again, at the Ryman, when you have the president of Fender up on stage, and then you have Trey Hensley, and you have Tommy Emmanuel, and you have Brothers Osborne and Larkin Poe and Kingfish, like all and it's like going, and they were just like walking on stage, plugging in the amplifier and start playing.
Yeah. And
I'm back, and it was ridiculous too.
Yeah, well, that's where I was going with this, and I'm not saying this just because I'm a bass player, and don't I don't know that bass player's name that was in the backing band, but he made that entire night. So he stood back there in his overalls and t-shirt and
Mhm.
absolutely crushed it all night long. And because everybody's playing songs they may have had one rehearsal on.
Right.
So there's a little hesitation to this. And he laid it down all night long so that they could do what they needed to do over top of it. And he was just as impressive to me as every one of those Telly players who was out.
I felt the same thing, and I was watching him, and I was watching the other guitar player, and the backup vocalist, and even the keyboardist Jason, and then Roe over on drums, and I'm like going, "Oh my gosh!" To just be able to, like you said, I mean, just go from, and they opened up the show with the artists that play down on Lower Broadway,
Yeah.
and they were all incredible. Yeah, and then Billy Gibbons just walks out and sits in with Larkin Poe. It was so Nashville, it's like, right, no, we're sitting there in the Ryman, and it's like going, "Okay, yeah, this fits us." But I mean, but also going back to what we were talking about with what you've brought and how you've heightened the game, I think, here in Nashville with 8th Avenue Guitar Works. It's about the hang, Jason. I was talking with some other musicians to where it's like the other day I was at a Rock Nashville for a Shure microphone deal. And, it you have incredible musicians, but also it's like, and from being a touring bass player, you gotta be a good hang. You can be the best bass player in the world, but if you're not a good hang when you're out touring with these artists and people, then you're not gonna get gigs.
No, no, no.
And I think it's the same for music stores and everything. Nobody, and I'm not gonna mention a guitar store that was here years ago, but kinda had the snob appeal, and I just wouldn't go back to it. It was in Franklin. But to me, and I think you know which one I'm talking about,
Yeah.
but
I may have some employees that used to work there.
it's like when I walk into, when any of us walk into a music store, and maybe we're in overalls or we're in shorts with a Fender t-shirt or something on, it's like, I think, sometimes some of the snooty shops will make, assumptions.
Yeah.
And I can tell you, from walking into 8th Avenue Guitar Works, it doesn't feel that way. I think everybody felt welcome because when I came in, you had all sorts of people. You had media people like me, but you know, you had the musicians coming in, the kids coming in and just looking at the wall of parts,
Yes.
and looking at the bodies and the necks and everything. And I'm going over and I'm taking a look at the finished instruments.
We have kids that come in every day after school to to hang out and play, and we got a call from one of their parents going, "Is this okay?" Like, "Yeah, we actually like them being in there." They're like, "Are you sure?" I'm like, "Yeah." They're hanging out playing with and not looking at their phones. They're actually playing guitars and singing, like,
But as kids, how often did you and I do that also though?
"Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I mean, like back when in Cape Girardeau, because once again, I would go to Shivelbines or Keys Music, for lunch, or when I was in Las Vegas, I would go to my pawn shops to try out instruments and to do values for them and everything. And I mean, those are the people, those kids end up buying and playing and creating music, and that's the whole. So what's your hope for this, Jason, as 8th Avenue Guitar Works becomes more well known? You assumed Mighty Might a year and a half ago, and then with M.I.R.C, I think being elevated as well in this sustainable age, as you're with this whole umbrella of musical instrument outlets, what's your hope for it, Jason?
We we call it being a creative hub for musicians. So we want to be where we can help people be creative. And whether that means just getting the right instrument for them at a price that they can afford on that, or helping them upgrade their instrument or figuring out how to work on their instrument themselves, just to be able to, in this town, make people be better musicians.
That's incredible. Well, once again, I'm going to be calling you up to get a tour of M.I.R.C. And I'm going to come in. I'm going to be coming into 8th Avenue Guitar Works because I didn't have time because it was so packed when I was there that day. I've got to come in and get some coffee. I got to buy a T-shirt. I got to buy a hat. I may walk out with a guitar or bass, but I just, everything that you and your team are doing, Jason, I think is very positive, and with the instruments, and with and 8th Avenue Guitar Works is just a great vibe. It's a cool location, and it's fun, and it's one of those places that you feel welcome in, and I think it speaks to that when you said when the teenage kids are coming in to hang out, the proud instruments and not be on their phones, but be in the moment musically, just like you and I were.
I tell our sales team, I'm like, please leave them alone. Don't go ask them too many questions. Don't run them out of here. Just let them sit there and play guitar. They're fine.
That is incredible. Well, I want to thank you again, Jason Gano, for coming on the show. Be sure and go to the websites that Jason mentioned for M.I.R.C, for Franklin, and also, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart, if you're in Nashville or you're coming to Nashville, Tennessee, go to 8th Avenue Guitar Works, have a cup of coffee, do like I did, go to the back and watch the repair people refurb some instruments, and just take in the space. And you may want to build a guitar or buy something while you're in there, but if nothing else, I think it speaks to Nashville on what you and your team have created, Jason.
Thank you so much. Please come down and see us.
I'm gonna, yeah, I think more people will. And once again, we're going to have to, next time you have your next big announcement, you're going to have to come back on Gear Gab. Okay.
Would love to.
All right. Thanks, Jason.
All right.
Thanks for joining the Gear Gab Podcast with Eric Dahl. Subscribe to our weekly conversations on your favorite platform. And if you like what you hear, don't forget to leave us a review. Follow us on social media at Gear Gab Podcast. You'll never know who our next guest will be.